Thaddeus Blackwood's Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floor of Nightingale Tech's lobby, turning heads as he strode toward the reception desk. 15 years had transformed the awkward teenager who fled Evergreen Falls into a man whose presence commanded attention. At 32, his tailored charcoal suit accentuated broad shoulders, while his steel blue eyes surveyed what would soon be his, another company to add to his empire, another step toward justice. "Mr. Blackwood," the receptionist stammered, recognition flickering across her face. "You don't have an appointment." "I don't need one." He placed his business card on the counter. "Tell Lawrence Jenkins I'm here." While waiting, Thad discreetly touched the antique pocket watch in his suit. His father's most prized possession, a Patek Philippe from 1922, was the only personal item he'd kept after Alexander Blackwood had taken his own life following financial ruin. The watch had stopped working years ago, but Thad carried it everywhere, a constant reminder of his purpose. 20 minutes later, Lawrence Jenkins, Nightingale Tech CFO, escorted him into a conference room, anxiety evident in the older man's fidgeting hands. "What brings Blackwood Enterprises to our humble headquarters?" Lawrence asked, attempting a smile. "Cut the pleasantries, Jenkins. We both know Harrison Nightingale has been incapacitated for years. The company's bleeding money." Thad placed a folder on the table. "Your stock has plummeted 30%. 3 failed product launches. Massive debt. I'm offering to buy you out before bankruptcy becomes inevitable." "This is rather sudden." "It's been 15 years in the making," Thad interrupted. "Maxwell Nightingale destroyed my father's company through corporate espionage and backroom deals. Now I'm returning the favor, except I'll do it legally." A commotion outside drew their attention seconds before the door burst open. A young woman with fiery auburn hair entered, cheeks flushed with anger. "You have no right to be here," she said, green eyes blazing as she confronted Thad. Lawrence cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Alara Nightingale, Harrison's daughter and our director of product development." Thad hadn't expected to meet a Nightingale so soon, especially not one who looked nothing like the calculating vipers he'd imagined. Her simple navy dress and minimal makeup contrasted sharply with the power women he typically encountered in corporate America. "Miss Nightingale, I was just explaining to Mr. Jenkins why selling to me is your only viable option. By ambushing our CFO without proper channels." Alara's voice remained steady despite her obvious anger. "That's not how business is conducted here. Clearly, your quarterly reports indicate business isn't conducted much at all." Thad stood, buttoning his jacket. "You have 72 hours to consider my offer before I start approaching your shareholders individually. Some are already receptive." Alara stepped closer, the scent of vanilla and something distinctly floral invading his senses. "My father built this company from nothing. I won't let you dismantle it for some twisted vendetta." Her words struck him. She knew who he was, why he was here. Her proximity unsettled him in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Your father and uncle destroyed mine," he replied coldly. "Poetic justice doesn't require your approval." As he brushed past her toward the door, she grabbed his arm. The contact sent an unexpected current through him. "Look around you, Blackwood. These are real people with families and lives. You're not just buying assets, you're threatening livelihoods." For a moment, something flickered in Thad's expression, a hairline crack in his veneer of indifference. He shook it off quickly. "Business isn't personal," he said. "Everything about this is personal for you," she countered. "Otherwise, you wouldn't be here yourself." Later that evening, Thad sat in his penthouse suite at Evergreen Falls' only luxury hotel, reviewing the dossier on Alara Nightingale. 23 years old, Cornell graduate, returned to Evergreen Falls 3 years ago when her father suffered a severe stroke. Unmarried, no significant relationships on record. His phone rang. "Marcus, what did you find?" His attorney's voice came through the speaker. "Harrison Nightingale's medical bills are astronomical. Insurance covers the basics, but the experimental treatments are out of pocket. Alara's been liquidating her personal assets to cover them. So she's desperate." Thad mused, swirling his scotch. "There's more. The company has a loan payment due next month. They won't make it without a miracle." Thad smiled. He had his leverage. "Sir," Marcus hesitated, "are you sure about this? Dismantling Nightingale Tech won't bring your father back." "This isn't about bringing him back," Thad replied, staring at his father's pocket watch on the table. "It's about setting things right." After hanging up, Thad walked to the window overlooking the small city where both their families had once been respected pillars of the community. Tomorrow, he would make his move. Alara Nightingale wouldn't know what hit her. He didn't anticipate the nagging doubt her words had planted, nor how her fierce loyalty to her father had struck a chord within him. He pushed the thought aside. Sentiment was a weakness he couldn't afford, not when he was so close to fulfilling the promise he'd made at his father's grave. Alara Nightingale hadn't slept. The numbers on her laptop screen blurred as she scrolled through financial projections for the 5th time. Every scenario ended the same way. Without immediate capital, Nightingale Tech wouldn't survive the quarter. Worse, her father's treatment would have to stop. She rubbed her temples, glancing at the clock, 5:30 a.m. In 2 hours, she needed to look capable and confident for the emergency board meeting. The same board that had been quietly entertaining Blackwood's offers behind her back. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Winters. Harrison had a difficult night. Stable now. Call when you can. Alara closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and headed for the shower. She couldn't fall apart. Not today. By 7:45, she was walking into Nightingale Tech's conference room, portfolio clutched tightly against her navy blazer. The board members' conversations hushed as she entered. "Gentlemen, Karen," she acknowledged the only other woman present. "I understand we're facing challenges, but with the new prototype ready for production." "The prototype that's 6 months behind schedule?" Simon Powell interrupted. The venture capitalist had been pushing for a sale since Harrison's stroke. "Alara, you've done admirably considering the circumstances, but let's be realistic. The circumstances being that I've kept this company afloat while nursing my father through a near-fatal stroke." Her voice remained calm despite the fury building inside. "The prototype works. We need 60 days to complete testing." "We don't have 60 days, Karen Zhao said gently. "The loan payment is due in 30, and Wells Fargo won't extend terms." A knock interrupted them. Lawrence entered, looking ashen. "Mr. Blackwood is here. He says he has a proposition that won't wait." Before anyone could respond, Thaddeus Blackwood walked in as if he owned the place, which, Alara realized with a sinking feeling, he soon might. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, not sounding remotely sorry. "I've been informed your financial situation is more dire than initially reported." Alara glanced accusingly at Lawrence, who studied his shoes. "Since when do we share confidential information with hostile parties?" she demanded. "Since 3 board members approached me separately," Thad answered, his gaze moving deliberately around the table. "May I?" Without waiting for permission, he connected his laptop to the projector. A graph appeared showing Nightingale Tech's plummeting stock value juxtaposed against Blackwood Enterprises' meteoric rise. "My initial offer was generous considering your position. After further review, I'm reducing it by 20%. The room erupted in protests and questions. "That's barely above liquidation value." Alara cut through the noise. "You're not acquiring us. You're picking the carcass." "I'm offering a lifeline," Thad countered. "Your company has 30 days until insolvency. Your employees lose their jobs, your father loses his treatment, and you lose everything your family built. Unless..." Something in his tone made Alara's skin prickle. "Unless what?" His eyes locked with hers. "Unless we structure this differently. A 1-year transition wherein I acquire controlling interest but keep operations intact. No immediate layoffs. Continued funding for your father's care." The board members exchanged hopeful glances. "What's the catch?" Alara asked, knowing predators like Blackwood never offered mercy without strings. "You." One word, delivered with chilling simplicity. "You work directly for me as my personal assistant for that year. You'll help integrate Nightingale's assets into Blackwood Enterprises." Stunned silence fell over the room. "You want me to help you dismantle my own family's legacy?" The proposition was so offensive, she almost laughed. "I want your institutional knowledge and your cooperation." Thad stood, buttoning his jacket. "Think of it as ensuring a smoother landing for your employees. Your choice, Miss Nightingale. A controlled descent or a crash with no survivors. This is extortion. This is business." He gathered his things. "You have until 5 p.m. After that, my revised offer expires, and I begin approaching creditors to buy your debt." After he left, the board erupted again. "It's humiliating but pragmatic," Simon said. "We need to accept." "He's making this personal," Alara argued. He wants to parade me around as his trophy. The nightingale who helped destroy her own nest. Karen touched her arm gently. He's offering to continue Harrison's treatment. Without that, the implication hung heavily in the air. Hours later, Elara sat beside her father's hospital bed, holding his frail hand. Harrison Nightingale had once been a titan of industry. Now, machines monitored his vitals while experimental stem cell treatments slowly helped his brain rebuild connections damaged by the stroke. "What would you do, Dad?" she whispered. "He's using me to hurt you." Her father's eyes, once sharp with intelligence, gazed at her with love but limited comprehension. By 4:45 p.m., Elara stood outside Thaddeus Blackwood's hotel suite, swallowing her pride before knocking firmly. He opened the door, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned forearms. He'd been expecting her. "Come in." He stepped aside. "Drink. This isn't a social call." She remained standing as he closed the door. "I want amended terms in writing. Straight to business." "I can respect that." He gestured to documents already prepared on the coffee table. Elara skimmed the contract, lawyer's daughter enough to recognize the critical points. "My father's treatment is guaranteed regardless of company performance." "Yes." "And severance packages for any employee terminated during restructuring, as specified in Section 12. She looked up, studying him. "Why me? You could have any assistant." For a moment, something unreadable flickered across his features. "You have unique insights into Nightingale tech. You mean I have access to information you can use against my family? If there's damaging information to be found, it exists whether or not you help me find it." He moved closer. "This arrangement benefits us both. Your father receives care. Your employees get a transition period instead of pink slips tomorrow. And you get to watch a nightingale dance to your tune." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "Let's be honest about what this is." Thad's jaw tightened. "My father swallowed pills because of what your family did. Consider this lenient." The raw pain in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't just business strategy. It was deeply personal for him. "I had nothing to do with whatever happened between our fathers," she said quietly. "Yet here you are, suffering the consequences anyway." His voice softened fractionally. "Life isn't fair, Miss Nightingale. That's something both our families understand." Elara took the pen, hesitating one final moment before signing. The scratch of her signature sounded unnaturally loud in the silent room. "When do I start?" she asked, feeling strangely hollow. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp." He took the contract, their fingers brushing momentarily. "We're something appropriate for the financial district. We're flying to New York." As she turned to leave, dignity intact but spirit bruised, Thad added, "For what it's worth, I admire your loyalty to your father. Mine would have appreciated the same." Elara paused at the door. "Then you understand exactly how much this is costing me." Walking back to her car, she finally allowed tears to fall. She'd sold herself to save her father and protect Nightingale employees. But she'd just made a deal with the man determined to destroy everything her family had built. What she couldn't know was how this impossible arrangement would change them both, or that the enemy she'd just agreed to serve harbored wounds as deep as her own. The Manhattan skyline glittered outside the conference room windows, but Elara barely noticed. For 6 weeks, she'd shadowed Thaddeus Blackwood through meetings, traveled to 3 cities, and watched him systematically analyze every aspect of her family's company. His efficiency was terrifying, his attention to detail unnerving. "The R&D department has potential," Thad said, reviewing her notes on his tablet. "The medical devices division particularly." Elara kept her expression neutral despite the spark of hope his words ignited. "That's my father's passion project. The neural interface technology could revolutionize stroke recovery." "It could," he agreed, surprising her. "But it's 3 years from market without additional investment." They sat alone in Blackwood Enterprises' New York office, surrounded by empty coffee cups and spreadsheets. It was past 9, the city lights now the only illumination besides their screens. "Your assessment?" he asked, a test she recognized from previous late nights. "Sell the consumer electronics division," she answered promptly. "It's underperforming and doesn't align with either company's core strengths. Keep medical tech and the engineering team behind it." Thad studied her with newfound interest. For weeks, she'd performed her duties impeccably but maintained rigid professional distance. This was the first time she'd offered a business opinion that might actually help preserve part of Nightingale tech. That's precisely my conclusion, he said. Perhaps you've missed your calling in acquisitions. I prefer building things to dismantling them. Her subtle barb didn't escape him. Sometimes you must clear the deadwood to save the forest. An alert chimed on his phone. He frowned at the screen. Our flight to Boston is canceled. Snowstorm. Everything's grounded until tomorrow afternoon at earliest. The Jensen meeting will have to be rescheduled, he finished, already typing an email. We'll stay the night. The Blackwood apartment is 15 blocks uptown. Alara tensed. Their arrangement had included separate accommodations during business trips, a boundary she'd insisted upon. I can get a hotel, she said quickly. In Manhattan? During Fashion Week. Thad raised an eyebrow. The apartment has 3 bedrooms. You'll have your privacy. The Blackwood apartment turned out to be a stunning penthouse overlooking Central Park. Minimalist furnishings in neutral tones contrasted with carefully selected art pieces that probably cost more than Alara's entire education. The guest rooms are down that hallway, Thad said, loosening his tie as he walked toward the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. I'll order dinner. Later, changed into yoga pants and a northwestern sweatshirt she'd packed for the hotel gym, Alara found herself drawn to the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in the living room. She ran her fingers along leather-bound classics and modern first editions, surprised by titles she wouldn't have associated with Thaddeus Blackwood. My mother was the reader. His voice came from behind her. He'd changed too, dark jeans and a gray Henley that softened his usual corporate armor. I kept her collection. He handed her a glass of wine, which she accepted after a moment's hesitation. What happened to her? Alara asked, realizing how little she knew about the Blackwoods beyond the corporate saga. Cancer. I was 12. He moved to the window, watching snow begin to fall. My father threw himself into work afterward. The company became everything. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. Losing a parent changes you. You haven't lost yours yet. Parts of him, she admitted, surprised at her own candor. Sometimes he remembers everything. Other days, he doesn't know me. The sushi arrived, and they ate sitting on opposite ends of the sofa, CNN muted on the massive television. The strange domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on Alara, dining with the enemy in his home, both in casual clothes, snow falling outside like a scene from a different story entirely. Tell me about the neural interface, Thad said suddenly. Not the business case. The science. Alara's face lit up despite herself. For the next hour, she explained her father's breakthrough in brain-computer interfaces, the passion project she'd helped advance during graduate school. Thad asked insightful questions, challenged her assumptions, and showed genuine interest, so different from his usual calculating demeanor. You really understand this, he remarked. Most executives can't discuss technical details with such precision. I was getting my PhD in biomedical engineering when Dad got sick, she explained. I've published 3 papers on neuroplasticity. Something shifted in Thad's expression. You abandoned your doctorate to run the company? To care for my father, she corrected. The company was secondary. He poured more wine, his movements deliberate. Yet you've managed both remarkably well. Until you came along. The words slipped out without her usual filter. Until Maxwell Nightingale's sins caught up with his brother's company, he countered, the familiar coldness returning to his eyes. What exactly did my uncle do? Alara asked directly. All I know is there was a business dispute 20 years ago. Thad's jaw tightened. He stole proprietary technology, sabotaged a major contract, and systematically destroyed my father's reputation in the industry. When Blackwood Technologies collapsed, so did my father. Outside, the snow fell harder. Wind rattled the windows as the storm intensified, matching the sudden tension in the room. I don't defend what happened, Alara said carefully. But punishing everyone associated with the Nightingale name won't bring your father back. That's not. He stopped himself, draining his wine glass. We should get some rest. The next morning, Alara found herself trapped in the apartment with Thaddeus Blackwood. The storm had escalated to a blizzard. Manhattan was effectively shut down. Flights are canceled through tomorrow, Thad informed her, looking up from his laptop. Power outages reported downtown. Alara nodded, clutching her coffee mug. She'd slept poorly, troubled by dreams where she couldn't tell if Thad was enemy or ally. Mid-afternoon, the lights flickered and died. Backup generators should engage, Thad said, but nothing happened. He sighed. Building management says the system's overwhelmed. They're working on it. As daylight faded, the apartment grew colder. They gathered candles and flashlights. Moving furniture closer to the gas fireplace, Thad managed to ignite manually. "At least we won't freeze," Alara said, arranging blankets on the sofa. In the firelight, the hard lines of Thad's face softened. Without his usual power suit, without electricity connecting them to their corporate roles, they were just two people seeking warmth in a storm. "You never asked why I came back to Evergreen Falls," he said suddenly, stoking the fire. "I assumed it was to execute your revenge plan." "Partially." He hesitated. "My father's pocket watch stopped working. I wanted to get it repaired before completing what he couldn't. Why not use a jeweler in New York? The watchmaker in Evergreen Falls was the only one my father trusted." Thad reached into his pocket, withdrew the antique timepiece. "Sentimental, I suppose." When he handed it to her, their fingers touched longer than necessary. Alara examined the beautiful craftsmanship, surprised by the trust implied in the gesture. "It's exquisite," she said, returning it carefully. "Has Mr. Ormond fixed it yet?" Thad looked startled. "How did you know I took it to Ormond?" "He's the only watchmaker in town," she smiled slightly. "And he repaired my grandfather's watches too." Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared history despite the corporate war that divided them. Later, huddled near the fire for warmth, they talked about neutral topics. Books they'd read, places they'd traveled, professors who'd influenced them. Without business between them, conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by unexpected laughter. When Alara shivered despite the blanket around her shoulders, Thad moved closer, hesitantly offering his warmth. She should have refused, maintained the professional boundary that protected her heart. Instead, she found herself leaning against him, her head eventually resting on his shoulder as exhaustion overtook her. Half asleep, she felt his arm encircle her, his breath warming her hair. "I don't want to destroy everything," he whispered, perhaps thinking she couldn't hear. "Just the lies." When she tilted her face upward, their lips were inches apart. The firelight painted gold across his features, revealing a vulnerability she'd never witnessed in their fluorescent-lit corporate encounters. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. A sudden bang as the front door flew open startled them apart. The building manager stood in the doorway, flashlight beam cutting through the intimate scene. "Emergency generators finally online, Mr. Blackwood," he announced, oblivious to the moment he'd interrupted. "Heat should return shortly." As lights flickered back to life, so did the barriers between them. Alara moved away, wrapping the blanket tighter around herself. Thad stood, business persona slipping back into place like a favorite suit. But something had changed. In the darkness, they'd glimpsed each other beyond the corporate masks, beyond the family feud. The almost kiss hung between them, unacknowledged yet undeniable. "We should get some sleep," Thad said formally. "Real beds tonight, now that the heat's back." Alara nodded, retreating to her room without meeting his eyes. Neither mentioned what had nearly happened, but as she closed her door, she heard him whisper, "Good night, Alara." It was the first time he'd used her first name. The spring rain pattered against the windows of Thad's corner office at Blackwood Enterprises' Seattle headquarters. 3 months into her employment contract, Alara had settled into an uneasy routine. Since that snowbound night in New York, Thaddeus had maintained scrupulous professional distance, as if determined to forget their near kiss. Alara organized files in the records room adjacent to his office, cataloging decades of Blackwood corporate history. The task was ostensibly to prepare for the full integration of Nightingale assets, but she suspected Thad had assigned it to keep her occupied and separated from him. "Miss Nightingale." His voice through the intercom startled her. "I need the Fraser acquisition files from 2005. She located the requested documents and entered his office, placing them on his desk without comment. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Stay a moment." He looked up from his computer, shadows under his eyes betraying too many late nights. "The board meeting yesterday. You were quiet. You didn't ask for my input," she replied carefully. "Yet you disagreed with the decision to dissolve the Nightingale Consumer Division immediately rather than at fiscal year-end." Alara's jaw tightened. "Does it matter? You have controlling interest now. Your perspective has proven valuable." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Even when it contradicts mine. 300 people will lose their jobs 2 months earlier than necessary. she said, professional veneer cracking. For what? A marginally better quarterly report. Instead of the sharp retort she expected, Thad sighed. You're right. Alara blinked, certain she'd misheard. I'll instruct HR to maintain current staffing until September as originally planned. He returned to his screen, effectively dismissing her. Stunned by this unexpected victory, Alara retreated to the records room, wondering what had prompted his change of heart. Near lunchtime, she discovered a box of files mislabeled as Tax Records 1999 that actually contained correspondence between Alexander Blackwood and various business associates. She started to reshelve it when a name caught her eye, Silas Nightingale, her uncle. Heart racing, Alara quickly checked that Thad's office door remained closed before examining the contents. The letters revealed a business relationship between her uncle and Thad's father that predated the corporate espionage Thad had described. They had been partners in a venture called Meridian Technologies. One letter particularly stood out, dated 3 months before Blackwood Technologies' collapse. Alexander, the Singapore investors are getting nervous. If the neural interface prototype isn't ready for demonstration next quarter, they'll pull funding. Maxwell knows nothing about my side arrangement with you, and it needs to stay that way. Too many variables already. As discussed, I've ensured the board remains unaware of the Chinese manufacturing issues. When this succeeds, we both win. If it fails, we have our contingency. Silas Alara's hands trembled. This suggested her uncle and Alexander Blackwood had been secretly working together, bypassing her father Maxwell and potentially engaging in questionable business practices. It contradicted everything Thad believed about the company's history. She photographed several key documents with her phone before carefully replacing the box. Whatever had happened between their families, the story appeared far more complicated than Thad's vengeful narrative. That evening, as she prepared to leave, Thad's assistant Miranda stopped her. Mr. Blackwood requests you join him in the conference room. Alara found Thad reviewing documents with a striking woman in her 50s, elegantly dressed in a designer suit that screamed old money. Alara, Thad said, the rare use of her first name catching her attention. This is Veronica Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Industries and an old family friend. Veronica extended a manicured hand, her smile not reaching her eyes. The famous Alara Nightingale. Thad mentions you constantly. Something in the woman's tone raised Alara's defenses. All good things, I hope. Veronica knew my father well, Thad explained. She's brought some information regarding past dealings between our companies. Alexander and I were quite close, Veronica said, touching Thad's arm with familiar ease. His death was devastating for many of us. I've only recently discovered documents that might help Thaddeus understand exactly what happened. For the next hour, Veronica outlined a narrative implicating not just Silas, but Harrison Nightingale in corporate espionage against Blackwood Technologies. Her evidence seemed compelling. Emails, meeting minutes, patent filings. But something fell off to Alara. My father was in Europe during most of 1998. She interjected when Veronica mentioned a crucial Seattle meeting. He was establishing our Frankfurt office. Veronica's smile tightened. Perhaps I've confused the timeline. It was quite long ago. After Veronica departed, promising to send additional documents, Alara lingered in the conference room with Thad. You don't trust her, he observed. Should I? Alara countered. She appears with convenient evidence supporting exactly what you've believed all along. 2 decades later, Veronica and my father were close, Thad said, though uncertainty flickered across his face. She has no reason to lie. Alara hesitated, weighing her next words carefully. Today I found correspondence between your father and my uncle Silas. They were partners in something called Meridian Technologies, separate from both family companies. Thad's expression hardened. What were you doing searching for that information? I wasn't. It was misfiled. She pulled out her phone, showed him the photos. Read them yourself. He scanned the images, his frown deepening. This contradicts everything I know about that period. Maybe what you know isn't the full story. Alara gathered her courage. And maybe Veronica's sudden appearance with selective evidence should be questioned. Thad's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, his phone rang. The hospital. Harrison Nightingale had suffered a setback. At Massachusetts General Hospital, Alara sat beside her father's bed, Thad waiting outside despite her insistence that he could leave. After midnight, when Harrison stabilized, She found Thad in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cold cup of coffee. "You should go home," she said, exhaustion evident in her voice. "He's stable now. I'll drive you back when you're ready." He pushed a sandwich toward her. "You should eat something." The simple act of concern touched her more than she wanted to admit. "Why are you still here?" she asked. "We both know you hate my father." "I hate what he and his brother did to mine," Thad corrected. "That doesn't mean I wish him dead." They sat in silence until Alara finally spoke. "My father wasn't in Seattle when those patents were supposedly stolen. The timeline in Veronica's documents is wrong." Thad nodded slowly. "I've been reviewing the letters you found. Something doesn't add up." He hesitated. "I'm beginning to wonder if I've been pursuing the wrong target all these years." This admission, small but significant, shifted something between them. For the first time, he was questioning the vendetta that had driven him for 15 years. 3 days later, with Harrison stable enough for Alara to return to work, she arrived at Blackwood Enterprises to find Thad's office empty. "He's taking his father's watch to be serviced," Miranda informed her. "Some watchmaker in Evergreen Falls said the guy finally had the parts he needed." Alara used Thad's absence to dig deeper into the archives, discovering more correspondence that painted an increasingly complex picture. Silas Nightingale and Alexander Blackwood had been developing neural interface technology similar to what Harrison later pioneered, technology that might have saved Alexander's company from bankruptcy. When Thad returned that afternoon, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone. "How's the watch?" Alara asked when they found themselves alone in the elevator. "Orman thinks he can fix it," Thad replied. "Found something strange, though, a hidden compartment in the case. He's trying to access it without damaging the mechanism." That evening, as they worked late in his office, Thad suddenly asked, "Why did you show me those letters? You could have kept them hidden, used them against me later." Alara looked up from her laptop. "Because I want the truth, not just a convenient narrative. Don't you?" Their eyes locked across the desk, the question hanging between them. Before he could answer, his phone rang. Veronica Hawthorne, requesting an urgent meeting the next day. "There's something off about her," Alara said after he ended the call. "The way she looks at you, at me, like she's calculating something. You think she's lying about her evidence?" "I think she has an agenda we don't understand yet." Alara stood, gathering her things. "Just be careful what you tell her about what we've found." As she reached the door, Thad called her name. When she turned, he seemed to struggle with what to say. "About New York," he finally managed. "The storm." Alara's heart quickened. "We don't need to discuss that." "I think we do." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Things have changed since then. What I believed about your family, about you, don't." She stepped back. "Whatever's happening between us is complicated enough without acknowledging that I can't stop thinking about you." The raw honesty in his voice stripped away her defenses. "That I wake up every morning remembering how it felt to hold you." The confession hung in the air between them, dangerous and exhilarating. Alara fought the urge to close the distance, to finish what had started in that snowbound apartment. "We're still on opposite sides of this," she whispered. "Until we know the whole truth, we can't." Thad nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then let's find the truth. Together." As Alara left the building, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something momentous. Not just the truth about their family's past, but a future neither had imagined possible 3 months ago. What she didn't see was the sleek black car parked across the street. Veronica Hawthorne, watching her departure with calculated interest, phoned to her ear. "He's getting too close," Veronica said to the person on the other end. "The Nightingale girl is becoming a problem." The Evergreen Falls Autumn Ball transformed the historic Westbrook estate into a glittering showcase of wealth and power. Alara hadn't planned to attend, but Thad insisted her absence would only fuel gossip. So she stood at the ballroom's edge in an emerald gown, watching him charm potential investors across the room. "The prodigal daughter returns," her cousin Bryce drawled, approaching with champagne in hand. "Surprise Blackwood let you off your leash tonight." "Always a pleasure, Bryce," she replied coolly. "How's Uncle Silas?" "Recovering from gallbladder surgery. He wonders why you haven't returned his calls." Because every conversation with Silas left her with more questions than answers, especially now that she suspected his role in the Blackwood downfall wasn't what Thad believed. "I've been preoccupied with Dad's recovery." "And with your new boss?" Bryce smirked. "The family finds your arrangement with Blackwood concerning. Before Alara could respond, Thad appeared beside her, his hand settling lightly at the small of her back. Mr. Nightingale. Thad's voice carried just enough ice to lower the temperature. Enjoying the evening? Immensely. Just catching up with my cousin. Family matters. I need to steal her away, Thad countered. The Myers are interested in the neural interface technology. As they crossed the ballroom, Alara whispered, "That was unnecessary. Bryce is harmless." Is he? His father isn't. Their meeting with the Myers was productive, genuine interest in the neural interface project that temporarily lifted Alara's spirits. Afterward, the orchestra began a waltz, and Thad extended his hand. "Dance with me." Wisdom dictated refusal, but something in his eyes made her accept. On the dance floor, they moved with surprising synchronicity, acutely aware of whispers around them. "Everyone's staring," she murmured. "Let them. You look beautiful tonight." As they turned, Alara spotted Veronica Hawthorne watching them with calculating eyes. "Veronica's here," she whispered. "I know. She's been watching us since we arrived." The music swelled, drawing them closer. For a moment, Alara forgot everything but his cologne and the warmth of his hand at her waist. "People will talk," she said softly. "They already do. Does that bother you?" "Does it bother you?" "I'm still a Nightingale." Something shifted in his expression. "You're Alara. The rest matters less each day." When the music ended, they remained close until Bryce's pointed cough interrupted. "If you're finished, Damon Mercer is asking for you both." Something about Meridian Technologies. They found Mercer in the library, silver-haired and smiling too widely. "The star-crossed executives. Quite the waltz you shared. You wanted to speak with us?" Thad's voice was all business again. "About Alexander Blackwood's pocket watch," Mercer replied, satisfaction evident as surprise registered on their faces. Hidden compartments in antique timepieces can be tricky, especially when they contain evidence. "What do you know about my father's watch?" Thad demanded. "Enough to understand why you've been playing detective. 20 million for what I know about Meridian Technologies and why Alexander Blackwood ended his life." Thad stood abruptly. "I don't respond to extortion." "Then perhaps I'll take my information to someone more appreciative. Veronica Hawthorne, for instance." "You already have," Alara realized. "You're working with her." Mercer's smile faltered. "Miss Nightingale, you're as sharp as your father." Before the stroke, of course. Outside in the garden, Thad paced while Alara processed this new threat. "He's bluffing," Thad finally said. "He can't know what's in the watch." "But he knows the compartment exists," Alara countered. "We need to see Ormond tonight." As they headed toward the parking area, Alara spotted Bryce watching from a window, phone to ear. Another piece of the puzzle shifted. Her cousin had directed them to Mercer deliberately. At Ormond's watchmakers, the elderly craftsman admitted them with surprise. "Mr. Blackwood, Miss Nightingale, has anyone been asking about my father's watch?" Thad demanded. Ormond's hesitation confirmed their fears. "A gentleman called this afternoon. Asked very specific questions about hidden compartments." As Ormond worked on accessing the compartment, Alara and Thad stood close in the shadowed corner. "Someone's trying to control the narrative," she whispered. "Mercer, Veronica, maybe my uncle. Which means it's important." Thad's fingers found hers. "Thank you for helping me search for the truth, even when it might hurt your own family." "The truth doesn't take sides," she replied, squeezing his hand. "Neither do I. Not anymore." When Ormond stepped away briefly, Thad turned to her. Without her usual flats and his business shoes, she in heels, he in evening loafers, their eyes aligned perfectly. "Alara." Her name was a question. She answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was everything their almost moment in New York had promised. Heat and connection transcending their complicated history. The shop bell jingled, followed by a camera flash. Damon Mercer stood in the doorway, lowering an expensive camera. Behind him, Bryce smirked. "Imagine finding Evergreen Falls' most unlikely couple at a watchmaker's at midnight," Mercer said. "The board members will find these photos fascinating." Alara stepped forward, fury replacing embarrassment. "What are you hiding, Mercer?" "These photos will cast doubt on any revelations you might share," he replied. "Who would believe evidence from two people clearly compromised by personal feelings?" As he turned to leave, he added casually, "I've always admired your father. Such a brilliant mind. Shame about the stroke. Modern medicine is remarkable, though, until it isn't." The implied threat hung in the air as he and Bryce departed. "He's threatening your father's care," Thad said, cold fury in his voice. "And using us against each other," Alara added. "Those photos make it look like I've seduced you to save the company." "I'll drive you to the hospital," Thad said immediately. "We'll increase security for your father." Outside, the autumn night had turned cold, stars obscured by gathering clouds. Neither spoke of the kiss, both understanding that greater forces were now in motion around them. In her car outside the Westbrook estate, Veronica Hawthorne called Silas Nightingale. "It's happening exactly as we feared," she said. "They've found each other, and they're getting close to the watch." Harrison Nightingale's hospital room was quieter than usual, the machines monitoring his vital signs humming at a lower frequency. Alara sat beside his bed, her gown replaced by jeans and a sweater, her fingers intertwined with her father's thin ones. 3 days had passed since the autumn ball, since the kiss, since Mercer's threat. "His latest scans show improvement," Dr. Winters said, flipping through the chart. "The experimental therapy appears to be working." Alara nodded, relief warring with suspicion. After Mercer's veiled threat, she'd requested additional security and a complete review of her father's treatment protocol. Nothing seemed amiss, but she couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. "Has anyone unusual asked about him? Made inquiries about his treatment?" she asked. Dr. Winters frowned. "Not that I'm aware of." "What?" "Just being cautious." After the doctor left, Alara leaned closer to her father. "Dad, I need your help. I need to understand what happened between our family and the Blackwoods." To her surprise, Harrison's eyes opened with unusual clarity. "Alara," he whispered, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "The watch." Her breath caught. "Alexander Blackwood's watch? You know about it?" Harrison's grip tightened on her hand. "Not what they told you. Silas lied." "About what, Dad? What did Uncle Silas do?" "Meridian," he managed. "Front company. Stolen technology." Alara moved closer, heart racing. "The neural interface technology? Your technology?" Harrison nodded weakly. "Mine first. Silas took it. With Damon. And..." He struggled for the name, frustration creasing his brow. "Veronica," Alara supplied. Recognition flashed in her father's eyes. "Yes. All three. Conspiracy." The door opened behind her. Thad stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. She hadn't seen him since the night at Ormond's shop, both needing space to process what had happened. "Is this a bad time?" he asked quietly. Harrison's eyes widened at the sight of him. "Blackwood's son," he whispered. "You look like him." Thad approached cautiously. "You knew my father?" "Partners," Harrison said, each word an effort. "Before they destroyed us both." Alara and Thad exchanged startled glances. "Dad, are you saying you and Alexander Blackwood were working together?" Harrison nodded. "Neural interface, our project. For partners. Me, Alexander, Wilson Chun, Rebecca Myers." Myers, the same name as the investors at the ball. Another connection. "What happened?" Thad asked, moving to the opposite side of the bed. "Prototype worked," Harrison continued, strength fading. "Worth billions. Silas found out. Joined with Damon, Veronica. Corporate espionage." "They stole the technology?" Alara asked. "And framed us. Made it look like we stole from each other." Harrison's grip weakened. Alexander couldn't bear the shame. "Your father wasn't a thief," he added, looking directly at Thad. "Neither was I." The monitors beeped as Harrison's heart rate increased. "The watch," he insisted. "Proof inside. Both signatures. Original patent." Dr. Winters returned, concern on her face. "I need to ask you both to step out. His blood pressure is rising dangerously." In the hallway, Alara and Thad processed the revelation. "If he's right," Thad said slowly, "then our fathers were victims, not enemies. And my uncle, Mercer, and Veronica orchestrated the whole thing," Alara added. "They're still protecting themselves." "The watch is the key," Thad said. "Ormond called this morning. He's accessed the compartment, but won't discuss it over the phone." Alara's phone buzzed, a text from Lawrence, Nightingale Tech's CFO. The board had called an emergency meeting after receiving concerning photographs, suggesting a conflict of interest between her and Thad. "Mercer works fast," she muttered, showing Thad the message. "I received a similar one," he replied grimly. "The photos have reached my board too. They were being systematically undermined, their credibility attacked before they could reveal what they'd learned." The kiss that had been genuine was now their greatest vulnerability. "We need that watch," Alara said, checking her father's room once more before they left. At Ormond's shop, the elderly watchmaker looked nervous. "I've had more visitors asking about your watch, Mr. Blackwood. Very insistent visitors." "What did you find?" Thad asked. Ormond carefully placed the now reassembled watch on the counter, then removed the back plate, revealing a tiny compartment. From it, he extracted a small metallic object. "A microfica," he explained. "Very old technology. Stores images on film. It's damaged, though, water exposure, I think. You'll need specialized equipment to read it." Thad pocketed the microfica. "Thank you, Samuel. Tell no one about this." Outside, they sat in Thad's car, weighing options. "My board meeting is in 2 hours, Alara said. "Yours?" 3 hours. Different locations, at least." The unspoken question hung between them. What about the kiss? The photographs? The sudden, undeniable shift in their relationship? About what happened here, Thad began awkwardly. "We have bigger concerns right now," Alara interrupted. "If those photos convinced the boards were compromised." "I don't regret it," he said firmly. "Whatever happens with the companies, whatever we find on that microfica, I don't regret kissing you." The directness of his statement caught her off guard. This was the man who'd entered her life determined to destroy her family's company, now looking at her with an intensity that had nothing to do with business. "I don't regret it either," she admitted softly. "But our timing is terrible." "It usually is," he replied with a hint of a smile. Both board meetings went exactly as expected. Accusations of impropriety, demands for explanation, calls for Alara's resignation from the Nightingale board. Only Karen Zhao defended her, arguing that personal relationships didn't invalidate her contributions to preserving the company. When Alara returned to the hospital that evening, she found an unexpected visitor in her father's room. Veronica Hawthorne sat beside Harrison's bed, perfectly composed in an expensive suit. "What are you doing here?" Alara demanded. "Paying respects to an old colleague," Veronica replied smoothly. "Harrison and I have history. The conspiracy kind, from what I hear." Veronica's smile faltered. "Careful, dear. Accusations require evidence. We have the microfica from Alexander Blackwood's watch. It was a calculated risk, revealing their discovery, but Alara needed to gauge Veronica's reaction. The flash of genuine alarm in the older woman's eyes confirmed everything. "Whatever you think you've found," Veronica said, voice hardening, "it won't matter. No one will believe two people clearly involved in an inappropriate relationship during a hostile takeover." As Veronica swept past her toward the door, she added, "Besides, damaged microfiche is useless without the right equipment to read it. Equipment only certain people possess." The implication was clear. They needed Veronica, or someone in her circle, to access the evidence that would expose her. Harrison stirred as the door closed. "She threatened you," he whispered. "We're handling it, Dad," Alara assured him. "Rest now." Her phone buzzed with a text from Thad. "Need to talk. Situation changing. Meet me at the penthouse." Outside her father's room, Alara hesitated, torn between staying with him and pursuing the truth that might finally free both families from decades of deception. "Go," Harrison said weakly, having seen the message. "Find the proof. Clear our names." With a final squeeze of his hand, Alara left, unaware that the real crisis was just beginning. The storm that had threatened for days finally broke over Evergreen Falls, rain hammering against the windows of Thad's penthouse. Alara paced the living room, still processing the bombshell he'd just delivered. The board voted to accelerate the dissolution of Nightingale Tech, he repeated, loosening his tie with agitated movements. "They're claiming financial irregularities require immediate action." "That's impossible," Alara countered. "The quarterly audit just cleared. This is Mercer's doing. And Veronica's." She made a compelling presentation about hidden liabilities that somehow wasn't on the agenda until this morning. Lightning illuminated Thad's face, revealing the strain of the past 24 hours. Neither had slept properly since the night of the kiss, both fighting battles on multiple fronts. "What about the microfica?" Alara asked. Thad shook his head. "I've contacted every specialist in Seattle. The water damage is extensive, without proprietary equipment, which Veronica implied only she has access to." Alara slumped onto the sofa. "We're being outmaneuvered at every turn." Her phone chimed with an email alert. She glanced down, then froze. What is it? Thad moved to her side. The Chronicle just published an article, she whispered, turning the screen toward him. Anonymous sources claim I seduced you to manipulate the Nightingale acquisition. The headline was brutal. Corporate seduction. Nightingale heiress sleeps her way to salvation. Beneath it, the incriminating photo from Ormond's shop, their kiss captured in perfect clarity, alongside financial documents suggesting Alara had received special treatment during the acquisition. These are internal documents, Thad said, scrolling through the article. Board minutes, acquisition terms. Someone with access to both companies leaked this. Alara's phone erupted with notifications, messages from friends, former colleagues, even her father's doctors asking if she would continue as his medical proxy given the troubling allegations. They're isolating me, she realized, destroying my credibility before we can expose them. The landline rang, the hospital. Harrison Nightingale had suffered another stroke, this one more severe. His experimental treatment had been administratively paused, pending review. This is no coincidence, Alara said as they rushed to the elevator. They're using my father to control me. At Massachusetts General, chaos awaited. Reporters clustered near the entrance, alerted to the scandal and Harrison's sudden decline. Security blocked most, but a few shouted questions as Thad and Alara pushed through. Miss Nightingale, did you sleep with Blackwood to save your company? Mr. Blackwood, was the acquisition a cover for your affair? Thad's arm around her waist guided her through the gauntlet, his body shielding her from the worst of it. In the elevator, she finally broke, tears spilling despite her best efforts. Hey, he said softly, pulling her against his chest. We'll fight this. All of it. My father might die because of their games, she whispered, voice catching. The company's finished. My reputation is destroyed. What's left to fight for? The truth, he answered simply. And us. The elevator doors opened before she could process his words. Dr. Winters approached immediately, concern etched across her features. He stabilized, but it was close, she explained as they walked. The interruption of his treatment protocol triggered a cascading failure. I've never seen anything like it. Who authorized stopping his treatment? Thad demanded. That's the strange part. The order came from the hospital administration, citing insurance complications. But Mr. Nightingale's care is privately funded through your arrangement. Outside Harrison's room, they found 2 security guards, not hospital personnel, but private contractors. I'm his daughter, Alara said when they blocked her path. Let me through. Sorry, miss. We have strict instructions. Family only, and Mr. Blackwood isn't family. The implication was clear. Someone had anticipated they would come together and had taken steps to separate them. Go, Thad said quietly. I'll handle things out here. Inside her father's room, Alara found Silas Nightingale sitting beside his brother's bed. Her uncle looked up, false sympathy plastered across his face. My dear niece, he said, rising to embrace her. She stepped back, avoiding his touch. Such terrible news on all fronts. What are you doing here, Uncle Silas? Supporting family during a crisis, he replied smoothly. Someone needs to protect Harrison's interests now that yours are compromised by the scandal you helped orchestrate. Silas's expression hardened. Careful, Alara. Accusations like that could further damage your already precarious position. He produced legal documents from his briefcase. The board has voted to remove you as acting CEO, given your conflict of interest. They've also petitioned for me to become Harrison's legal guardian, considering your demonstrated poor judgment. Rage and fear battled within her. You won't get away with this. We have the Microphica. The damaged, unreadable Microphica? Silas laughed softly. Even if you could access it, who would believe you now? The brilliant Alara Nightingale, reduced to a cautionary tale about mixing business with pleasure. From the bed, Harrison made a strangled sound. His eyes were open, aware but unable to speak, fury evident in his gaze as he looked at his brother. Dad, I'm here. Alara moved to his side, taking his hand. We're fighting back. Thad and I. Thaddeus Blackwood is facing his own problems, Silas interrupted. His board is voting on his removal as we speak. Damon Mercer made quite the presentation about Blackwood's compromised leadership. A commotion outside the door drew their attention. Thad entered, security guards reluctantly standing down. You need to see this, he said, holding out his phone. On the screen, a breaking news alert announced that Blackwood Enterprises stock had plummeted 30% following allegations of corporate espionage. The article named Thad as the primary suspect, citing newly discovered evidence. Quite the coordinated attack, Ilera observed bitterly. You were right about Veronica, Thad said, his expression grim. She just announced a merger between Hawthorne Industries and what remains of Nightingale Tech. With Silas as the new CEO, Silas didn't bother hiding his smugness. Business, dear nephew-in-law that never will be. Nothing personal. Everything about this is personal, Thad countered, eyes locked on the older man. Just like it was 20 years ago when you, Mercer, and Veronica stole the neural interface technology and destroyed both our fathers. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Silas's face. Preposterous accusations from a desperate man. Harrison's heart monitor began beeping rapidly. Despite his condition, he was trying to communicate, eyes fixed on a small notebook beside the bed. Ilera picked it up, uncertain what he wanted. Harrison blinked rapidly, and she understood. He wanted her to take it. You should leave, Silas told Thad. Before I call security again. I'm not going anywhere, Thad replied, moving to stand beside Ilera. Neither of us is backing down. Outside the hospital room, reporters had gathered, alerted by anonymous tips about the corporate drama unfolding. On televisions throughout the hospital, financial news channels reported on the twin falls of Blackwood and Nightingale, the scandal that connected them, and the surprising rise of Hawthorne Industries. You've lost, Silas said simply. Both of you. The companies, your reputations, everything. Accept it gracefully. As security finally removed them from Harrison's room, Ilera clutched her father's notebook, the last communication from the man who had sacrificed everything for his vision. In the hospital parking garage, rain still pouring outside, she opened it to find a single name written in shaky handwriting. Rebecca Myers, knows truth, has reader. Thad looked over her shoulder, recognition dawning. The Myers from the ball. The neural tech investors. For the first time in hours, hope flickered. We need to find her. Now. As they drove away from the hospital, neither noticed the sedan that pulled out behind them. Damon Mercer at the wheel, phone to his ear. They're on the move, he reported. And I think they found a way to read the Microfica. The Evergreen Falls Chamber of Commerce annual dinner transformed the grand ballroom of the Harrington Hotel into a sea of business attire and polite networking. Despite the pounding rain outside, attendance was nearly perfect. No executive would miss the event where deals were made and alliances formed. At the podium, Damon Mercer addressed the crowd, his victory barely concealed beneath professional courtesy. As we celebrate innovation in our business community, I'm pleased to announce the surprise merger between Hawthorne Industries and the restructured Nightingale Technologies, with Silas Nightingale as CEO. Applause rippled through the audience as Silas and Veronica stood, acknowledging their triumph with practiced humility. Furthermore, Mercer continued, Blackwood Enterprises will undergo significant leadership changes following recent irregularities. The ballroom doors burst open. Thaddeus Blackwood strode in, Ilera Nightingale beside him. Their formal attire couldn't hide their determination, or the fact they'd clearly rushed there, rain dampening their hair and shoulders. Murmurs spread through the crowd. After the scandal, after their very public disgrace, their appearance together was either remarkably brave or foolishly desperate. Mr. Blackwood, Mercer recovered smoothly. We weren't expecting you tonight. Clearly, Thad replied, voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. You thought we'd be busy trying to salvage what's left of our reputations. He approached the podium, Ilera close behind. The crowd parted, equal parts scandalized and intrigued. Instead, Thad continued, taking the microphone. We've been with Rebecca Myers, reviewing some very interesting evidence. Rebecca Myers stood from her table near the front, a distinguished woman in her 60s. Evidence I've authenticated personally, she added, holding up a folder. Silas rose, alarm breaking through his composure. This is hardly the venue for exposing a 20-year conspiracy? Ilera interrupted. I disagree. It's perfect. Thad connected his phone to the presentation system. On the massive screen appeared documents, patents, and photographs, the contents of the Microfica, now restored and legible. 20 years ago, Thad explained, For researchers developed revolutionary neural interface technology. Harrison Nightingale, Alexander Blackwood, Wilson Chun, and Rebecca Myers. Their work would have transformed medical science and made them all very wealthy. Alara stepped forward. But three people, Silas Nightingale, Damon Mercer, and Veronica Hawthorne, conspired to steal this technology. They manipulated evidence to make it appear that Harrison and Alexander had betrayed each other. On screen, incriminating correspondence between the conspirators appeared, alongside the original patent application bearing all four researchers' signatures, the document that had been hidden in Alexander Blackwood's watch for 2 decades. My father took his own life believing he'd been betrayed by his partner, Thad said, emotion finally cracking his professional facade. Harrison Nightingale lost his company and eventually his health, fighting to reclaim what was stolen. Rebecca Myers joined them at the podium. I can confirm every document's authenticity. I've spent 20 years searching for this evidence. Veronica surged to her feet. This is absurd. These documents could easily be fabricated. By the 2 people you've spent weeks discrediting? Alara challenged. The ones with the inappropriate relationship during a corporate takeover? If we were going to falsify evidence, we'd have chosen something less complicated than a 20-year conspiracy. The room erupted in overlapping conversations as security approached the podium, summoned by Mercer. Thad raised his voice over the chaos. The original neural interface research has been submitted to the SEC and FBI for investigation. Corresponding financial transactions have been flagged for review. He turned to face the stunned executives directly. I hereby resign as CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, effective immediately. Gasps and exclamations filled the room. For Thad, who had spent 15 years building his company with single-minded determination, to abandon it publicly was unthinkable. Thad, what are you doing? Alara whispered, grabbing his arm. His eyes met hers, certainty replacing the conflict that had haunted him for months. Something more important. Without another word, he strode from the podium, through the crowd, and out into the stormy night, leaving Alara standing alone before Evergreen Falls business elite. For 3 heartbeats, she remained frozen. Then understanding dawned, along with a decision equally momentous. Like Mr. Blackwood, I resign from Nightingale Technologies, she announced. The neural interface project belongs to all 4 original researchers or their heirs. That's all that matters now. She followed Thad's path through the stunned crowd as Silas shouted after her, as security closed in on Mercer and Veronica, as the business empire built on stolen innovation began crumbling behind her. Rain pounded as she burst onto the street, searching frantically. Lightning illuminated Thad running toward the train station 3 blocks away. Thad, she called, voice barely carrying over the storm. He turned, rain plastering his hair against his forehead, his expression shifting from determination to wonder as she ran toward him. You left everything, she said when she reached him, both now drenched. Your company, your revenge. Not everything, he answered, reaching for her. Not you. Their kiss tasted of rain and freedom, of endings and beginnings. 20 years of rivalry, 6 months of enemies becoming allies, becoming something more, all culminating in this moment of choice. Companies, fortunes, reputations, all sacrificed for truth and for each other. What now? She asked when they parted, foreheads touching. We start over, he replied. Together. No rules, but our own. Lightning flashed again, illuminating their embrace, not in a watchmaker's shadowed shop or a snowbound apartment, but in the open street where anyone could see. No more hiding, no more divided loyalties. The truth had cost them everything they thought they wanted, only to give them what they truly needed. Each other.